Texas, 1884, in the last cool week of March, and the Nueces country was throwing off winter the way it always did, grudgingly in fits, with cold mornings giving way to afternoons that smelled of new grass and mesquite bloom. The Sutter outfit was gathering 1,100 head of longhorn for the drive north to Dodge City, and the man who owned that outfit, a cattleman named Josiah Sutter, had a problem 3 days before the herd was set to move. His cook had broken his leg falling drunk from a hayloft, and a trail drive without a cook was not a trail drive at all. It was a slow-moving disaster with no supper at the end of it. Nora Fenwick walked into the Sutter yard on a borrowed mule with a bedroll, a knife roll, and a letter of reference from a hotel kitchen in San Antonio, and she asked for the job before anyone had thought to offer it to her. "I have never hired a woman to cook a drive," Josiah Sutter said. He was standing in his own yard looking at her the way a man looks at a horse he is not sure will hold up under the saddle. 16 hands, 3 months on the trail, river crossings, storms, snake bite, and not one soft bed the whole way. "It is not a woman's work. It is exactly a woman's work," Nora said. "I have cooked for railroad crews of 40 men in weather worse than anything Texas can throw at a summer trail. I can make a Dutch oven do things your last cook never dreamed of, and I can do it on half the flour he wasted. I am not asking for charity, Mr. Sutter. I am asking for $40 a month, and my keep, same as you'd pay a man, and I will earn every cent of it." Sutter looked at her a long moment. She was 24 years old, sturdy through the shoulders from real work, with brown hair pinned back hard against the wind and eyes that did not waver from his. She had the look of a woman who had already decided the answer would be yes, and was only waiting for him to catch up to it. "Why do you want this?" he asked. "Truly, I want land," Nora said. "My own. Not a husband's, not a father's, mine, deeded in my name. 80 acres in the Panhandle is going for $2 an acre if a person has the cash in hand and the nerve to file the claim before someone else does. I have the nerve. I am short the cash. 3 months' wages on a drive will close most of that gap." Sutter's foreman, a lean man of 36 named Cole Whitaker, had been standing at the corral fence through this whole exchange, saying nothing. And it was Cole who spoke next. "I'll vouch for the hire," he said. "If she can cook half as well as she talks, we'll eat better than we have in 5 years. Nora looked at him, really looked, for the first time, and saw a man who did not look away from her either, which she found she appreciated more than she expected to. "One thing," Nora said, to the whole yard, to Sutter and Cole Whitaker and the 4 hands who had drifted close enough to listen. "I am here to feed you. Every one of you, 3 times a day, better than you've eaten in your lives if I have my way. I am not here to find myself a husband among 16 cowhands on a cattle drive, and I would take it as a kindness if every man here understood that plainly, on day 1, so nobody wastes his breath." There was a general shuffling and a few looks traded between the hands, and one young cowhand named Dobie Reyes laughed before he could stop himself, and Nora fixed him with a look that made him stop laughing considerably faster than he had started. Cole Whitaker did not laugh. He touched the brim of his hat once and said, "Understood, ma'am," and went back to the corral, and that was the whole of it. The drive moved out on the 1st of April, 1,100 heads strung out for the better part of a mile across the Nueces Flats, 16 hands riding point and flank and drag, and behind them all, drawn by a strong team of mules, the chuck wagon that was now Nora Fenwick's kingdom and her responsibility, and, she intended, her fortune. She learned the rhythm of it inside a week. Up before dawn to get the fires going and the coffee boiling, The wagon rolled ahead of the herd at midday to make camp and have dinner ready when the drive caught up, then packed again and rolled on to make supper camp before dark. She learned which hands liked their coffee strong enough to float a horseshoe and which liked it weak, who ate fast and who lingered, who was homesick and covered it with jokes, and who was homesick and said nothing at all. She learned, too, inside that first week, that Cole Whitaker did not eat like the other men. It began on the third night out, at a camp along a dry creek bed lined with mesquite, when Nora had fried up a mess of beefsteak from a steer that had gone lame and been butchered rather than lost to the drive entirely. She had cut the meat as evenly as she could manage over an open fire, with 16 hungry men waiting. But there was always one piece better than the rest. Less gristle, better marbled, cut from the part of the animal that cooked kindest, and she had set that piece aside without particular thought, meaning to eat it herself once the men were served, because a cook eats last and eats what is left. When she went to claim it, it was gone from the pan, and in its place, on the tin plate she kept for herself at the tailgate of the wagon, sat that very piece of meat. She looked around the fire. 16 men sat eating, talking, paying her no particular mind. Cole Whitaker sat a little apart, as he generally did, eating his own plate, which held a piece considerably less choice than the one now sitting on hers. He did not look up. He did not say a word. He simply ate his supper as though nothing at all had happened. Nora ate the piece of meat. It was, she noted privately, the best cut of the batch, and she said nothing about it either, and told herself it meant nothing at all. It happened again the next night, and the night after that. By the end of the first week, it had become a fact of the drive the way the dust was a fact of the drive, or the coyotes at night, or the particular ache that settled into a person's back from standing over a fire for 3 months running. Every night, without comment, without so much as a glance in her direction, Cole Whitaker made certain the best piece of whatever she had cooked found its way to her plate before she could claim it for herself. She never saw him do it. She only ever saw the result. She thought about asking him why. She thought about it for 200 miles, across the Red River crossing where the water ran high and cold and swallowed a yearling calf before anyone could stop it, across the long dry stretch through the Indian Territory where the grass thinned and tempers thinned with it, and she never once asked, because some part of her understood that asking would end it, the way naming a shy animal too soon will send it back into the brush. Instead, she watched him the way she watched everything on that drive, carefully, and without seeming to. She watched him ride the worst ground himself rather than send a green hand into it. She watched him sit up 2 full nights running with a horse that had colicked, walking it in slow circles under a sky gone thick with stars, when any other trail boss would have shot it and called it a loss. She watched him settle a dispute between 2 hands over a card game without raising his voice above the volume a man uses to discuss the weather, and she watched both men walk away from that quiet talking to looking chastened in a way that a shout would never have accomplished. And she watched him watch her when he thought she was occupied with her fire and her Dutch ovens and would not notice. She noticed. There was an evening past the Canadian River crossing, with the drive gone quiet and most of the hands rolled into their blankets, when Nora sat mending a torn seam in her apron by the last light of the fire, and Cole Whitaker came and sat down across from her, not close, a respectful several feet of packed dirt between them, but closer than he generally allowed himself. "You handle that Dutch oven better than any cook I've had in 15 years of driving cattle," he said. "You handle 16 men and 1,100 head of longhorn better than any trail boss I've cooked for," Nora said. "And I've cooked for 4. High praise." I don't hand it out where it isn't earned." He was quiet a moment, turning his hat in his hands the way she had noticed he did when he was working up to something and did not entirely trust himself to say it plainly. "I heard what you told the outfit that first morning," he said, "about not being here to find a husband. I meant it. I know you did. I am not here to argue you out of it." He set his hat down beside him. "I only want you to know I heard it, and I have tried to conduct myself accordingly, and if I have failed at that in any particular, I would want you to tell me plain, the same way you told the outfit plain." Nora looked at this man across the low fire, sun-browned, quiet, careful with his words in a way that made the words worth more when he finally spent them, and she found, to her own considerable surprise, that she did not want to tell him he had failed at anything at all. "You have not failed," she said. "You have been the one man on this whole drive who has treated me like a person doing a job instead of like a curiosity or a temptation or a problem to be managed." "That is because that is exactly what you are," Cole said. "A person doing a job, doing it better than anyone had a right to expect." "And the meat?" she said before she could stop herself. Cole went very still. "What meat?" he said, in the voice of a man who knows exactly what meat and is buying himself time regardless. "The best cut. Every night. It finds its way to my plate before I can claim it, and you never say a word about it. And I have decided I would like to hear you say a word about it. Just the once." Cole Whitaker looked at the fire for a long moment. Then he looked at her. "A cook feeds 16 men and eats last and eats whatever is left," he said. "I have watched cooks do that on every drive I have run for 15 years, and I never thought a thing of it, because that is simply how it is done. And then you came on this drive, and I found I could not sit at that fire and watch you take the worst of what you'd cooked with your own 2 hands, when you had cooked the best of it too, and nobody in this outfit seemed to notice or care that the person doing the most work ate the least of the reward for it." He turned his hat once more. "So I started making sure the good piece got to your plate before you could give it away to somebody else, which I noticed you were also inclined to do. I did not say anything about it because I did not want you thinking it was courting. It was not meant as courting. It was meant as fairness." "And now?" Nora asked, very quietly. "Now," Cole said, "I am not entirely sure it has stayed just fairness, but I will not push past what you told this outfit on day one, and I will not make you regret trusting me enough to ride 200 miles with your back to 16 armed Cowans, and only my word that none of them would trouble you. If you want it to stay fairness, it will stay fairness, and I will say no more about it as long as I live." Nora sat with that for a long moment, the fire popping low, the herd settled and quiet somewhere out in the dark, the whole vast night pressing down around 2 people who had just told each other something neither had planned to say. "I did not come on this drive to be courted," she said finally. "But I find I did not account, when I made that rule, for a man who would earn it honestly. 1 plate of meat at a time, without ever once asking anything of me in return." "I am not asking anything of you now either," Cole said. "I only wanted you to know I heard you, and that the meat was never nothing." "I know," Nora said. "I have known for 200 miles. Word travels through a cattle drive the way water finds low ground, quietly, inevitably, and eventually everywhere. By the time the herd crossed into Kansas, the whole outfit had noticed what Nora and Cole had noticed about each other, and most of the hands thought well of it, because Cole Whitaker was respected, and Nora Fenwick had earned 16 men's genuine regard through 3 months of the best trail cooking any of them had known. Not every man on that drive thought well of it. Dutch Merrick was Sutter's segundo, the second in command of the outfit, a hard-bitten man of 42 who had ridden with Josiah Sutter for a dozen years and had expected, when the old man finally stepped back from active droving, to be handed the position that had instead gone to Cole Whitaker, a man 15 years his junior. He had swallowed that disappointment the way a man swallows a fishbone, carefully, and had let it sit in him ever since. He did not care for a woman on the drive to begin with. He cared for it a good deal less once he understood that the trail boss he already resented was sweet on her, because in Dutch Merrick's accounting, that meant Cole Whitaker's judgment on this drive could no longer be trusted to be about cattle alone. He made his move at the relay stop outside Dodge City, 3 days shy of the stockyards, when Josiah Sutter rode out from town to check on the drive's progress and see the herd through its final push. "Boss," Dutch said, catching Sutter alone by the remuda while Cole was out working the herd's edge, "I have held my tongue 2 months and more, but I would be failing you if I did not say it now, before we deliver these cattle. Whitaker has let that cook woman turn his head clean around. He has favored her plate at every meal, sat up with her past dark more nights than I care to count, and a trail boss who cannot keep his mind on 1,100 head of cattle is a trail boss fixing to lose some of them. I have seen good drives go bad on less. That is a serious charge, Dutch. It is a true one. Ask any hand on this drive whether Whitaker's attention has been where it ought to be the last 2 months, and see what they tell you." Josiah Sutter was a careful man who had built a cattle fortune on caution, and caution made him listen to Dutch Merrick's charge more seriously than either Cole or Nora would have liked, had they known it was being made. That evening Sutter called Cole aside from the fire and put the accusation to him plain, and Cole did not deny the substance of it, because he would not lie about Nora Fenwick to save his own position. "I have not neglected this herd 1 hour of one day," Cole said. "Ask your own tally. We have lost fewer head to this drive than any Sutter outfit has lost in 5 years, and that is Nora Fenwick's doing as much as mine. A crew that eats well and eats on time is a crew that rides sharp, and every hand on this drive will tell you the same. If caring for a woman honestly, without ever once shirking my work for it, is a charge against my judgment, then I will answer to it standing, because I have nothing to hide and nothing to apologize for." Sutter looked at his young trail boss for a long moment, and then he looked at the tally book in his own hand, which told a story Dutch Merrick's accusation could not touch: the fewest cattle lost, the fastest pace, the healthiest hands of any drive Sutter had run in a decade. "I will judge you on your cattle, Whitaker, same as I always have," Sutter said finally. "The tally speaks for itself. But I will tell you plain, Dutch came to me with this because he wanted me to doubt you, and I would want to know why a man would spend his breath trying to put doubt where the numbers show none is warranted." That was the end of it, as far as Josiah Sutter was concerned. It was not the end of it, as far as Dutch Merrick was concerned, because a man who has failed to unseat his rival through whispers will sometimes reach for a rougher tool. The last river before Dodge City was the Arkansas, running high that spring from mountain snowmelt far to the west, and it was there, on the next to last night of the drive, that the trouble Dutch Merrick had been arranging came due. He had ridden out from camp 2 nights running, telling the other hands he was scouting water, and what he had actually been doing was meeting with a small band of rustlers working the Kansas cattle trails that spring. Men who made their living running off a portion of a herd during a river crossing or a night storm, when confusion gave cover to theft, and who paid a segundo handsomely for information about a drive's route and timing. The stampede came just after midnight, started by 3 riders firing pistols into the herd's flank from the dark timber along the river, exactly where Dutch had told them the herd would be bedded and exactly when the current would be running highest and hardest to work cattle through. 1,100 longhorn came up off their beds as one animal and ran for the river in a wall of horn and hide and pure animal terror, and every hand on that drive scrambled for a horse in the dark, and Cole Whitaker was among the first mounted, riding hard for the point of the herd to try to turn it before it hit the water running wrong and drowned itself by the 100. He turned the leaders. It cost him. His horse went down in the dark on ground it could not see, pitching him hard into a stand of river willow, and the herd's wheeling mass came within 20 feet of running straight over him before the turn he had bought with his own body took hold and carried the cattle away along the bank instead of through it. Nora heard the shots and the thunder of it from the chuck wagon and did not wait to be told what to do. She had learned, over 3 months, exactly where the wagon's lantern and rifle were kept, and she took both, and she drove the mule team herself, at a pace she would not have believed the animals capable of, down along the river bank toward the sound of the worst of the noise, because that was where a man would be needed most, and she intended to be there. She found Cole in the willows, breathing but not moving, his left leg bent wrong beneath him and blood dark across his scalp where the fall had opened it, and she found, 30 yards further on, 3 riders working the herd's drifted edge in the dark, in a manner no honest cowhand ever worked cattle, cutting off a portion of the confused stock and pushing it hard away from the main herd, toward a draw that led north, away from Dodge City and any owner's claim. Nora did not hesitate. She fired the rifle once into the air, and the flash and the crack of it in that dark confusion did what she had hoped it would do. It spooked the cut-off cattle back toward the main herd instead of away from it, and it announced to 3 men expecting an unguarded night that somebody was watching after all. The rustlers broke off and ran rather than risk a fight over stolen beeves with a rifle already firing, and Nora let them go, because Cole Whitaker on the ground with a broken leg and an open scalp mattered a great deal more to her in that moment than 3 thieves getting away clean. She got him into the wagon. She set the leg as best she could by lantern light, splinting it with wagon slats and torn strips of her own petticoat, and she cleaned the scalp wound and bound it, and she sat with him through the rest of that night while the hands worked the scattered herd back together under a sky just beginning to gray toward dawn. He woke near sunrise, and the first thing he said was her name. "I am here," Nora said. "You turned the herd. You very likely saved half of it from drowning, and you very likely saved the rest of it from being run off clean by whoever fired those shots." "Dutch," Cole said through the pain, with sudden clarity. "It was Dutch. He has been riding out at night, telling us he was scouting. I should have marked it sooner." It was Nora who found the proof, going through Dutch Merrick's gear at first light, while the man himself sat a horse at the edge of camp, watching the recovery of the herd with an expression that did not match a man who had lost sleep worrying over stolen cattle. In his saddlebag, folded small, was a scrap of paper with a name and a river crossing written on it in a hand that was not his own, and a sum of money, $40, paid in advance, that no honest segundo's wages would explain. She brought it to Josiah Sutter herself, walking straight past Dutch Merrick to do it, and she laid the paper and the money on the tally table in front of the old cattleman without a word of preamble. "Your trail boss is lying broken-legged in that wagon because he turned 1,100 head of cattle away from a stampede your segundo arranged," she said. "Ask him where he was the last 2 nights. and ask him to explain $40 he cannot account for honestly. Dutch Merrick did not stay to answer the question. He was gone from camp within the hour, riding hard for the territory line, and Josiah Sutter did not chase him, because a man running from an accusation answers it plainly enough by running. The herd reached the Dodge City stockyards 2 days later, down 11 head from the stampede and not one more, which Sutter himself pronounced the best outcome he could have hoped for given the night they had survived, and the cattle sold at a fair price, and every hand on the drive was paid in full, Nora Fenwick among them, $40 a month for 3 months, and a bonus besides, which Josiah Sutter pressed into her hand personally. For the rifle shot, he said, and for finding what Dutch Merrick did not want found. That outfit owes you more than a cook's wages, and I mean to see you paid it. Cole Whitaker's leg mended slow through that summer, set properly by a Dodge City doctor and given time to knit, and Nora Fenwick stayed in Dodge City to see him through it, rather than riding straight for the Panhandle Land Office with her wages in hand, though the land was waiting and she had earned the means to claim it. "You do not have to stay," Cole told her from a hotel bed with his leg in splints, in the particular tone of a man trying to give a woman back the freedom he was half afraid she had already given up for him. "I know I do not have to," Nora said. "I am staying because I want to, which is a different thing entirely, and I would ask you to trust that I know my own mind on it, same as I knew it that first morning in your yard." By September, Cole was walking again, with a cane he would need the rest of his life, and a leg that would ache before every rain. And the two of them rode together to the Panhandle Land Office, and filed a claim on 80 acres of good grass along a spring-fed creek, in Nora Fenwick's name alone, exactly as she had always intended, because a promise a woman makes to herself before she meets the man who will share her life is a promise still worth keeping in full. They were married that October, on the land itself, under a cottonwood at the edge of the creek, with Josiah Sutter riding out to stand witness, and Dobie Reyes, and half the old drive crew besides, having heard word and come the distance for the chance to eat one more of Nora Fenwick's suppers. She cooked the wedding meal herself over an open fire, the way she had cooked every meal of that long drive north, and when the plates were served, there was, as there had been every night for 3 months on the trail, one piece cut better than the rest. She set it, without a word, on Cole Whitaker's plate. He looked at it. He looked at her, and for the first time in 6 months he laughed outright, the sound of it rolling out over the new grass and the new creek and the 80 acres that were, at long last, entirely and only hers, which was to say now also entirely and only theirs. "I believe," he said, "you have been waiting the better part of a year to do that." "I have," Nora said. "It seemed only fair. Some loves are built on a single grand gesture, a rescue, a declaration, a ring offered on bended knee. Others are built the slower way, one plate of meat at a time, across 1,000 miles of dust and river crossing and quiet unspoken care, until the two people involved look up one day and find the whole of it already built, sturdy as a good chuck wagon, without either one of them ever having called it courting. She had told them straight on day one that she was there to feed them, not to find one of them. She had meant it entirely, and it had turned out to be true right up until the moment it was not, and the difference between those two things had been earned, in silence, one good cut of meat at a time. If your heart has ever leaned toward a story where love arrived quiet, and took the long road, and stayed long enough to change everything, then this story was for you. Out along the old cattle trails where the dust has long since settled, and the rivers still run the same as they always did, The love between Cole Whitaker and Nora Fenwick became the kind that needed no single grand moment to prove it, because it had already proven itself, one plate at a time, the whole way north. If stories of frontier love that endured through hardship, prejudice, and the kind of silence only the West knows speak to you, follow the lonesome trail for more. Here, the love stories are quiet, the courage is real, and the last word is always worth the wait. Until the next trail.